Hi everyone, welcome to the webinar. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate your time. Having a look at the attendees, I think most of you know who I am. I'm Matt from Qamba IT. I won't bore you too much with much more than that. Look, I thought this would be a good format to go through and answer some of the questions that we get around Microsoft Teams quite commonly. And today we're going to be talking about the voice component and in particular how it brings together the unified communications piece within Teams to be able to communicate with parties external to your businesses. If you have any questions throughout, please use the Q&A and we'll come back to that towards the end and we'll answer all those together. We have a wonderful speaker today who is very experienced in this topic, in Peter Eldon, which I'm sure you'll enjoy and take away a few key things. I'll hand it over to Pete shortly, but before I do, just wanted to keep in mind three key things with unified communications that we'll touch on towards the end of the webinar to ensure consistent communication, being simplicity, mobility and security. So keep those in mind and we'll touch on them later. But Pete, over to you.
Thank you very much, Matt. I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to chat to yourself and your customers. And as I said, thank you for your time. So 2 pictures of me is too many, so we'll get right past that. My name is Peter Eldon. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing for Access 4. And Access 4 is a Australian UCaaS vendor. And what does that mean? It's unified communications as a service. And a little bit about us, we're a channel-only business, which means we only work with organizations like Matt's, and we do that for a really good reason. We're very good at these voice and collaboration services, but Matt and his team are exceptional at understanding customers' needs and your needs. And when you put that together, it's a really good solution. So best of breed voice and collaborations with someone who really understands the particular needs and also as an advocate for your requirements back into us as a vendor, and that works really well. All of our services were built in the cloud. And what that means is we're now not trying to get a phone system that's quite old and try and throw it into the cloud and say that works. We designed it for that purpose and it's always been there. All of our support is in ANZ, so we're in Australia and New Zealand, and everyone who supports our services works for us and are very passionate about it. And we've got, significantly over 200 partners now who work with us on that, because obviously this is a very prevalent and a hot topic for most conversations. And we're award-winning. So the solution that we've built that helps Matt and his team provide these services has been recognized as best of breed within the industry. So before we go on a little bit more about us, let's talk about what UC is. What is unified communications? So unified communications is a collection of technologies, like things like video, voice, chat, instant messaging, presence, and collaboration tools that are all brought into a centralized point. And I don't mean a centralized point as in a physical location like an office. I mean a centralized point as in a one device. So rather than having all of those things on separate things like phones and laptops and smartphones, it all brings them back into one particular device that can really go anywhere. And that really means that it is very much a very flexible, and now it untethers you from being stuck into an office, and you can really provide those same services and same collaboration tools no matter where you are. And a really key point that Matt mentioned as well is that this isn't just talking about your internal communications. So when people think about chat and messaging and collaboration and video, they're kind of thinking mostly about inter-office. So, 2 people who work in the same business having a chat over something about they're trying to work on. Whereas what true UC is, it really opens it up to your customers and your suppliers. So effectively taking all of the communication tools that you have in an office, like call waiting, messages on hold, the receptionist being able to see when you are on and off calls, tying in all those collaboration tools as well, and plus your extension numbers and the likes, and unshackling you and being able to take that anywhere. And for that point, it's very much the modern workplace for obviously a lot of things that we're going through. So let's have a talk about why it's the modern workplace and why this is so important to businesses right now. And for that, we're just going to have a quick history lesson. So just bear with me on this. So I don't know if you guys remember, but a few years ago, we had these things called offices. And staff used to go to offices, right? We always should go in a bus or in a car for multiple hours, and we'd go to these offices. And because everyone used to go to these central points, we put all of our comms and IT equipment in there. So we'd put servers, we'd put phone systems all into these offices. We'd put in support staff to work with our staff to make sure our customers are being looked after. We put all our IT equipment all in at one point so we can all collaborate, work together to look after our customers and do what we do for a business. And this worked really, really well for many years. And then one day, this guy turned up and turned all of this on its head. And so overnight, we had a significant issue, and it was, really credit to organizations like Matt and his team that were very quickly able to try and get businesses operational in a world that was thrown on its head. So overnight, we went from having all of our equipment, as we see here in these offices, and then our staff not able to get there. They're all stuck working from home, and now we have a major problem. So what we do and what we look at from moving forward is we try and solve that problem by eliminating people needing to be in an office. So by putting these services into the cloud and making them available anywhere, we can provide the same level of communication and collaboration and availability and customer service to a home or wherever they are and untether them from the office. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have to go into the office. It means it doesn't matter. You can be in an office or you can be in the home, and you're going to have the same levels of communication and the same tools that are available. Because the reality is, when all this hit us, we're all pretty much thinking, I'll give it 6 months and we'll all be back in the office and we'll forget it ever happened. But the reality is that certainly didn't happen. But more importantly, it's not going to happen. We're never going to get back to a point where it's 100% within an office. We're always going to have some format of hybrid working, so home, work, or whatever it is. And we'll talk about why businesses are really having to come to peace with that and understand that, if we try and force staff back to an office, we're going to have some issues around that. But as a business, we still need to make sure that our customers are being looked after. We still need to make sure that staff are engaged and working with us. And so how do we do this in this hybrid environment? And really, one of the biggest areas that we do is we take that, tethered solutions and we release it to be where it is, but we also combined separated solutions. So things that used to be on a PC and a phone, we combine it into that one device, which is very easy just to pick up and walk out and be able to do what you need to be able to do. And again, for the obvious reasons, this is very much front of mind. So when we look at what's in the news today, you'll see a ton of articles on this. And these articles are talking about, how we'll not go back to a full office environment, but also the risk if we force staff to do that. There's some really interesting surveys that went through about, over 40% of staff would be willing to change employers if their current employer didn't offer a flexible working environment and the new employer would. And then when we look at millennials, which is that next generation coming through to the workforce, that went over 55% of them would be willing to pick an employer over those flexible working arrangements. And then we see plenty of other information around the tightness of the employment market as well right now, and about how these flexible working arrangements can give a competitive advantage when trying to hire talent into the business. So let's talk a little bit about what we do and how we help solve these problems and why we're unique. So what we do, I'm just going to get my little laser pointer to be able to show you. So what we do at Access 4 is we take best of breed UC solutions, so phone solutions. So BroadSoft, which is a telco grade hosted PABX solution. So rather than having a PABX that sits in your office and you replace every 3 years for lots of money, we move that to the cloud and we deliver that wherever you are, however you need to be. We also have a Teams calling solution, which is obviously very prevalent at the moment. Everyone's using Teams. People are really interested in seeing how they can get some real productivity gains by taking Teams and integrating that into their phone system. We have Cisco WebEx, which again is a really strong collaboration and UC solution. And we have Zoom calling coming very soon. So we take these best of breed solutions and we plug it into our own IP, which is a product called SaaSBoss. And what that does is it makes it really simple for Matt and his team to be able to manage. So it doesn't matter if you buy one or all of these solutions based on what your particular needs is. Matt's team can very easily provision, manage, and support you through what we do. And then on top of that, we take additional add-on services, things like call center programs, so you can actually run a little call center yourself, analytics, so you can understand who is working, who isn't, who's engaged, who's not. Best of breed phone systems, so you can actually have a physical phone on your desk if you want, or you can have just a headset, or you can just use a laptop like I'm doing now. So again, what we're all talking about is choice. What would you like? Does someone want a handset? Someone doesn't want a handset. Someone chooses a laptop. Someone wants to work in an office. Someone wants to work remotely. It shouldn't matter. They should have access to the same levels of communications, no matter where they are. And you should be able to see how productive and engaged they are, no matter where they are. So a few things that we do. Carry great technology, really important. So all this stuff's well and good, but if we've just got some 20-year-old nerds sitting in the office just cutting really cool code and the stuff doesn't work half the time, that's not going to help you with your phones. So you need to make sure that the product is tested, true, and it's going to work for you just like your normal phones would. It's all self-managed. So Matt and the team don't need to wait on us or a crusty telco to get something done. You need another user added on a Friday because they're starting Monday, Matt and his team can set that up immediately. There's no CapEx. And that's a really interesting one, right? So if you think about how traditionally you bought phone systems, is every 3 years the PABX sales guy would come in and he'd sell you another phone system on significant money up front. Now, if you think about what's happened over the last 2 years, and you think about how we're changing how we work and where we work, it's a brave person right now who's dropping significant upfront money on a phone system that's tethered to an office. Again, zero touch provisioning, putting everything in Matt's hands and his team's hands to make sure you guys can get prompt service. And we all know telcos aren't great at that. So these IT and technology tools that we provide means that the power's in Matt's hands and he can really service those needs very quickly. To further to that is local support. No one really says, oh my word, my telco just gets great customer service. My poor wife has been sat on hold for a provider for mobile phones for what seems like 3 days, right? I just keep giving her food because that's kind of a struggle and it's what we expect. Whereas with IT, we don't expect that. When you ring into Matt, you expect to get one of his team members very quickly. So why not the same for your phones? And then leading tech product and development. Now, this is a really interesting one for me, is that we effectively become your R&D team around voice. So we're always looking for new and interesting products that we can add to our portfolio that solve problems. And that could be analytics, it could be call center, could be AI, could be omni-center contacts. And what that means is, you've got a thing on your website where someone can hit an AI bot to start answering some questions. They get into the buying pattern. They can click on a button. It will then immediately bring up one of your agents to start speaking to them about that. You could turn that into a video call. So it's really about bringing those enterprise-grade communications and sales tools that you see in the big end of town are using, and bringing that down to small and medium business and sharing that out at a reasonable price. And we're constantly doing that. And then reporting and analytics. So showing you guys what's happening and how it's happening, because as we know, information is power. If you're in an office and a staff member is really not engaged, you kind of notice that. But if they're working remotely, some or all of the time, how do you know that? So that reporting and analytics can see if people are engaged and how they're working, because your phone bill will pale and instant, won't matter compared to an employee who's not been productive for multiple months. So the faster you can get hold of that and the faster you can actually help that person, the better you'll be. So let's have a quick chat about what it is, or what are the trends that are driving all of this change, and how this type of stuff helps. So when we survey end customers about what their challenges are, what we see is that, the workforce is very much becoming more mobile. And we talked about why, this is COVID. But as I said, there's a lot of benefits that have came out of that remote work environment, which means that it's not going to go back to how it was. And, one of those is when you used to hire staff, you would hire staff who was the best to do the job within 50K because they had to come to an office. Well, if you have those same productivity and communication tools, no matter where they are, now that 50K doesn't matter as much. Now you can hire the best person to the job, period, not one who just lives close to you. A lot of our meetings are now going online, and there's a lot more collaboration. I mean, even this, like if you go back 2 years ago, these meetings would all go into a hall, would maybe buy you a bit of lunch and would sit there and would have to really commit a lot of time. Now you can jump on your lunchtime, grab a Uber Eats, have a presentation like this, and it's really not going to impact your day. Now, we're not saying we don't go and meet people in presence. There's still a real need for that. But this really enhances and adds to our productivity. And so having tools that are efficient in that are really important. The employee experience is positively linked to the customer experience. This is a really interesting one. So what we're saying here is the way your staff are feeling around your communication tools, probably the way your customers are feeling too. So when you went to a remote work environment or a hybrid because of COVID, if your staff are getting a little bit frustrated and feeling a little bit isolated and they're hard to get hold of, your customers are probably having the same problems. And that's a major issue, because what we saw is when we went into COVID, when Matt and the team were doing a great job getting everyone operational, the phones, it was like, just divert it to someone's mobile. Because again, we thought we'd be out of this in a couple of months. And that kind of worked. But what we're seeing now is, there's real frustrations in customers trying to engage call centers, engage businesses, because this kind of just get it up mentality of diverting to mobiles and the likes, it's not sustainable. So making sure that if you're running a call center or you have people trying to ring out and book appointments or sell things, that it's easy to do and they're accountable and your customers are happy. And then another one, more tech savvy. There's more and more people coming into our employment who expect these things to work and expect to have these tools because it's all they've ever known. A couple of things there. So as I said, 65% of the workforce is distributed. 63% of people spend at least 2 hours a day in meetings. Mine is significantly more than that. I mean, again, this is that interesting point about millennials. So 3/4 of the workforce will be millennial. So 75% of the workforce will be millennial by 2025. Now, to scare everyone, 2025 is effectively 3 years away. I know, terrifying. A couple of things that what are keeping businesses up at night. So tied into this, low employee productivity engagement. If they're not in the office, how do I know they're working? What tools can I use to make sure that my staff are engaged and are happy? Organizations are siloed and there's poor communication. So if you had that in an office, right? So if finance didn't talk to sales and they didn't talk to logistics and they weren't collaborating, that didn't get better when everyone went to work from home. So again, tools that allow people to easily communicate with each other, both internally and externally in a business, super important. And that feeds down to that bottom one, which is fragmented business tools. So if you then don't have a mesh between those tools, so if your chat isn't connected to your video, isn't connected to your SharePoint, isn't connected to your phones, then you're losing information and you're losing customer service. So the ability to have a CRM, so when a customer rings in, the CRM talks to your phone system, knows who the customer is, brings up that customer's latest order, alerts finance that the person's actually behind in their bills. So actually diverts a call from the sales team to finance so they can, hey, Betty about your bill. Oh, yes, sorry, I'll get that sorted out straight away. And Betty's like, how did I know I was ringing in? That's because all your tools are your software's working together. And now you've got a better customer outcome, but also a better business outcome as well. And then when we look on the customer facing end, it's about those competitive pressures. So, the phone is still the first point of contact. Messaging's becoming a second point. Now they'll swap over at some point, but you want to always be available, whatever the case is. So having those UC tools, which means it doesn't matter if someone's coming by email, video chat, messaging, or phone, they're going to get the same quality service, really important. And the same thing your customers, making sure your staff are engaged, happy, and feeling part of the business is really important in making sure that customer service is delivered. So we've talked a little bit about the business drivers, why this is important. We've talked a bit about what we do differently. What I want to just touch base on quickly is around Microsoft Teams and Teams calling, because this is a really significant area of growth. If you think about Teams, probably 95% of you, 99% of you have got Teams on your laptop, and you're using Teams as your messaging. And that's because it's the fastest growing business collaboration software out there. Most enterprises use it, and there's 180 million active concurrent users. So that's a significant base of people who are already using this interface. And so the next logical step in there is, well, why don't I tie my phones into that as well? And what do I mean that? It was just integrate your telephony into your Teams. So if you've got an extension, well, your extension's now on your laptop or on your smartphone, or a combination of all of them. When someone rings in and they want to press 1 to talk to sales or finance, then Teams is what they're doing that on. It's picking that up and it's providing that information in. And so more importantly, when they go home for what's meant to be a weekend that turns into a 6-month lockdown, when they grab their laptop and walk out the door, they just took their entire collaboration tools with them. So it's effectively, they took that whole phone system and walked out the door. And that's really what Teams does. But the other thing that the benefit of Teams is it delivers an interface that everyone's already using. They're already using Teams for chat and messaging. So just now having that phone book immediately available and using that out of Teams, no matter if it's a headset or a soft phone that's connected up, means that your change management is super easy. And it can be a complete PABX replacement, but the challenge with Microsoft is Microsoft's marketing's very, very good, right? And sometimes the product doesn't necessarily catch up with the marketing. And so Microsoft's base product is a very good phone replacement if you have basic users. They might take a call twice a day. They're not really transferring calls. They don't really need to see who's on there, and then they're probably not a call center. If you want to use really all the benefits of a complex enterprise grade PABX in Teams, then you need an enhanced product, and that's something that we very much do. When we talk about using those best of breed products, what we can do is we can combine multiple products to deliver a true solution. And so what we do is we actually take the basic Microsoft Teams solution and that interface that everyone's used to using, and then we overlay that over that enterprise grade hosted PABX solution I spoke about earlier, BroadSoft. And what that really does is really gives you a really powerful product, because what it now provides is the same functionality people want to use, which is Teams, but now this whole overlay of a PABX. So things like call recording. So if you're doing call center analytics and supervisor and caller, so you can put your hand up if they want to go for a break virtually. You can queue calls. You can see who's taking the most calls, all that type of thing. You can have IVR, so press 1, press 2, call messages on hold, all of that type of thing. And then that integration into the CRM that I spoke about with that example of the CRM being smart enough to know who's calling, when they paid, what they bought last, and really drop all that information to your call center or salespeople ready to go. And then the other benefit of our enhanced product is that we actually put a layer of redundancy over the top of Microsoft. And that was one of the things that Matt spoke about, which was that flexibility and security, and then availability as well. Is, you know, if you've just got a basic Microsoft product and Teams authentication isn't working, then you're not going to be able to make calls, and that's a major problem. What we do is, by having that extra layer of redundancy, it means that if there was an issue with Microsoft authentication, you would still be able to make and send and receive calls as if you were still available, and customers would still be able to call in. Because, as Matt said, that redundancy is super important. If you think about what's happening, you know, businesses right now, you know, there's malware attacks, there's uncertainty around COVID, and then there could be a physical event that happens to your office, be it a fire or a flood or something like that. By having UCaaS and having that in the cloud and having redundant solutions that are supported by ourselves and by Matt, what that means is you're future-proofed. Doesn't really matter what happens next, right? You've got to work from home, you've got a problem with the building, you get a malware attack, it doesn't affect your phones. Now, there's a lot of other things you need to do around protecting your data, and Matt will be able to talk to you about that, but from a phone standpoint, we support you, and that's one thing off the list that you need to worry about. So in a nutshell, what we're saying is we only work with organizations like Matt because they understand your needs. We are absolutely tireless on making sure that we provide best of breed, easy to use voice and communication and collaboration solutions to Matt to be able to provide people like yourselves. So Matt will be able to help you and chat to you about what we do and how we can help, but very much whatever it is your needs are, there's a solution that we do that will be able to provide that. And we'd be happy to talk to you guys more about what that looks like and bring in and give a demo at any point. But at that point, I'm going to bring Matt back in. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Matt's going to finish off and talk about a little bit more about the tie-in of Access 4 and how we work with Matt and his team. Welcome back, mate. You've got the screen. Beautiful. All right, I will shut up and I'll come back at the end. Thanks for everyone's time.
All right, thanks for that, Pete. Appreciate it. Look, at the end of the day, we partnered with Pete and the Access 4 team because they have got that best of breed sort of technology, and they really make us look good with the telephony sort of stuff. So, you know, those that have worked with me in the past know that going fast with technology is important, keeping pace, but more importantly, delivering sort of business impact using technology more so than focusing on the technology itself. So Access 4 really help us with that. But what I wanted to do now is just tie it back into the simplicity, mobility, and security, because I think they're the key top level things that they're probably most important to those on the call. So starting off with simplicity, at the end of the day, hybrid is pain, and I'm not talking about the hybrid that we're dealing with now, although that can be painful of where we're working in some cases, but it's more about the pain of the technology when it's in hybrid. So having multiple technologies or certain complexities and different ways of being able to communicate or processes to do so can be a real time sink and a distraction for people to be able to communicate. So generally we'd advocate less is more. So, you know, less applications, less systems, trying to make things simple. And most people using Microsoft 365 at the moment, and they have the breadth of technology when combining with partners like Access 4's carrier grade telephony to make that appear less to the people that are using it, despite what's happening behind the scenes. So, staff onboarding is a lot easier as well. So being able to bring people on easily and then go, your telephony system is in Teams, which is where we also use our chat to be able to chat internally, where our documents are, where our apps are all connected, and our Teams just makes that process so much simpler. And I'm a big advocate for having systems to define those processes rather than long and drawn out documents that cover those things off. Reducing reliance on IT might sound weird for something that, for a company that provides IT services, but the cloud-based systems that are being built really do enable this. And I think that in the next 10 years, we'll be seeing less and less servers and complex systems for IT to manage. And they'll be focusing more on what the technology can do to empower the business to move things forward. So obviously we want to make those things move fast. So the less we can get in the way, the better. And lastly, just controlling the communication with your customers. Pete mentioned it earlier, that noting the employee experience being positively linked to customer experience just makes sense. If the people that are answering your customers are happy, they're going to be giving a better experience. So being able to transfer calls within the office and doing all those sorts of things when people are possibly working in work from home entirely, a hybrid state where they're in some days and not others, or working in the office full time, just makes it a lot easier. I know at the start of the pandemic, my wife was working for a commercial business linked to the government, so very old school sort of technology in the first lockdown, and she didn't have a phone to use. They didn't have a solution for it, and she had to start using her mobile phone to call customers and contractors and staff. So it makes it a lot harder to control the communication, especially if you're the type of business that's trying to funnel that communication back into certain processes that you're building to ensure the customer experience is positive. Moving on to mobility. So for a long time, we've been working in a lot of different places. So mobility is key, more importantly, when we have to work from out of the office. But consistency gives speed. So as Pete touched on before, whether you're using your laptop, your phone, your desktop, a physical handset, being able to work from anywhere on any of those devices consistently with one number, whether you're on mobile or Wi-Fi for your data, having that consistency just means that it's easier for people to work faster and not be held up by the technology. If you're anything like us as well, you staff mobiles and dealing with the telcos can be quite painful, as Pete mentioned. Having no more staff mobile phones for the physical devices or even just managing the plans that go along it, which can be quite expensive. And I don't know about others. I used to carry 3 phones when I'd be on call for work and personal and then on-call phone. And that's really, really painful to do, especially when you've got to charge them all the time. So having just one system where people can put things on their phone that they use normally, that's sort of siloed away, but still gives a consistent experience is really powerful as well. And it could potentially be a big cost saving. This one, avoiding hardware relocations is really something that happened a lot during the lockdowns, where we saw customers which would take hardware from the office and work from home on traditional VoIP systems, which was functional and it worked, but you've got to make sure you got the power and the internet data and the right connections and just moving it around. And it just adds stress to the already constant changes of those lockdowns that we're getting put into. So being able to move between them easily is really key. And just productivity and working from home, making sure people are engaged. We at Qamba have transitioned to a full working remotely solution. Just made sense for us to do that. So whether we're working at a customer site, whether we're working at home, or whether we're working in some office space somewhere else, we get a consistent experience where we can see what's happening with everything and understanding where people are at. So if somebody's on a phone call, for us, we use this solution as well. We have for almost 12 months. And to be able to see that somebody's on a phone call versus in a meeting or presenting in Teams, and having that consistency is really helpful and important for us. And just jumping into the last one here quickly, which is security. As I mentioned, working from anywhere is important now, but being able to do so securely is really important. If you have to manage different sort of areas, it's just going to make life more difficult, more complex, more passwords to remember, and it just makes things go slowly for everybody and make it inconsistent. Using the Microsoft 365 platform, most people know their email password, they've got the Teams password. So making that all the same makes life a lot easier, especially when you tie that into multi-factor, which just ties off all the security aspects there as well. And then just reputation management. So if you've ever had to deal with a security incident, the anxiety that creates is huge, and that's something that's as somebody who works in an IT business as well, and knowing the impact that can have on customers is really really difficult to manage. So being able to keep that reputation moving forward in a positive manner, simplifying the platform generally will increase the security, but doesn't require dramatic cost increases or complexities. So that's always something that we're keen to focus on, how it appears to customers down the line. So I think that's all from myself. Just having trouble getting these slides to come through here. There we go. So final thoughts. Peter, thanks for your overview. I think it was really great. A couple of things that really pointed out to me is you were a very articulate way of communicating what unified communications is. One of the big things I probably didn't touch on too much was the presence. I felt that's a really important passive communication, being able to see where people are at without having to communicate it. I even used it the other day with a customer where I was sending them an email and the little light showed up as read. So I didn't want to email them straight away. So, or make the phone call that was going to be coming straight after. So just that passive communications, really powerful.
Yeah, and even that, I had just one example this morning where we'd been working as a group on a tender with a partner in SA, and I was in between meetings, but I was available. Hit there, the whole group was called in just for the partner tells we won the tender, right? So even that, right? Normally you'd be pinging around multiple people, when's available. They just hit the call. Everyone who was available was picked up. It was on Teams. We all jumped on, had a bit of a congratulations, and away we went. Now, that was productive, but that made my day, right? That's good. Yeah. Good to know that the work we're doing is having a win and we move forward. So, you know, it's really good to see the external communication really coming into the fore. And I think that's really where a lot of the benefits will be, is making your customers feel like partners rather than feeling external.
Yeah, exactly. And I know we're back in the office a lot more now, but it's really easy to communicate and socialize like that and engage when you're in the office. But if we're going to be in any sort of hybrid environment moving forward, we need to make some of those deliberate efforts to be able to bring that together. And that can make a massive difference to how people feel about how they're going. It could make their day, as you said. So that's really positive.
There's an interesting article just on the weekend around that. A lot of organizations now are making rules around collaboration meetings. So if you have, if you're not all in the office, then everyone has to come in via the collaboration tool. So because what's happening is, you know, if a group of people are in a boardroom and it's not really set up well, then you really have this poor communication. So what they're saying is everyone's staying on the desk. No one's even if they're in an office, not even walking into a boardroom to have that meeting. Everyone's staying at the desk and coming in over Teams or Zoom or Slack or whatever it is to have that meeting, because we're at a point now where there are always going to be someone coming in remotely. And so we need to make sure that we're communicating in the same manners. That's a really interesting change. Imagine Imagine that 2 years ago, like there was no chance that would have happened.
Yeah, it'd be unheard of, really. But yeah, and again, that just comes back to simplicity and consistency. People are not guessing about what they should and shouldn't be doing. Should be going to the boardroom? Should I just join here? And it just changes the dynamic of that meeting. And at the end of the day, we're just looking for opportunities to be to using the time well, because time's one thing that always seems to be short. So that makes more productive meetings.
And realistically, we are literally at the shore on this, right? The ocean is ahead of us. If you look at what Facebook just done with changing it to Meta, this whole idea of the metaverse. I mean, there's now organizations building virtual offices, right, and having a virtual presence in there. Because if you think about where this will go in a number of years with hybrid optics, and so augmented reality is, you've got multiple people in a meeting. Some of them are physically there, some of them are coming in remotely. All that will be tied back from this initial start of UC. And so we're very much on this, it's like, well, is this going to take off? It is, it's happening. And so these tools we start using now, they'll be the ones that will develop into some really interesting things about collaboration and virtual meetings in the years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And ultimately what we want to be doing is we want to be taking small steps in those changes, because big change can be really painful to bring things along. So if you stick pace with these things and do those little incremental improvements, you're obviously going to be closer to that point when it becomes available to decide whether it's a good fit for.
Well, absolutely. In fact, you don't even notice a change, right? As if you're always looking for those enhancements to your business. You then look back in 5 years and go, wow, we've came a long way, but it's a natural change. Yeah, and I think it's just a matter of, for businesses, what I'd say is don't buy technology because it's cool. Buy technology if it solves a problem for you. And I think that's super important, is that, when these guys came out, it was because they went mad because they were solving problems and they were giving stuff that we didn't have. And I think that's what this is, we're seeing more problems now around collaboration and productivity. They solve that, and that's where I would say use technology. Don't just buy it because some guy said it's cooler than the last one.
Yeah, exactly. And it comes back to what you said about millennials in the workforce in 2025. Like, I was speaking with somebody of an older generation yesterday who said, we're going to be, I don't like typing. I don't like typing because it takes me too long. I don't enjoy doing that. I'd rather make a phone call, or what they've started doing is dictating. So using dictation tools, and that's available in Teams as well. But the millennials could prefer to type or text or chat, and bringing all that together, it gives you the option to be able to collaborate in those different ways, but with some consistency. So
yeah. And how far has that dictation software came from? Remember that Dragon back in the day? You needed an entire server that could send the shuttle up to be able to run it. And now, just on your phone, just WhatsApp or whatever, the quality of that with my accent, it's picking up what I'm saying. It's doing all right.
Yeah, must be good.
All right. Brilliant. Well, so what are people? What maybe we'll throw it up, see if there's any questions out there from anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's pop it along to question time. Not sure if anybody has posted anything yet.
Let's have a look through.
Let's have a look.
I don't see any questions as yet. I mean, it was pretty comprehensive, but if anyone has any questions, please feel free to throw them in there for us.
It's going to say maybe we covered all the other questions that might have come up, but we'll if anybody has any questions, obviously they can reach out to us afterwards as well.
Absolutely. And Matt, what should they do? I mean, we've covered a lot, right? It can be quite overwhelming. It's like, look, what do I need to do here? How do I just want to provide good customer service? So, what should the guys do if they want more information, or where should they go from here?
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, I think most of the people will reach out to afterwards as well. But we've got an offer that's come along with this webinar that can help people get started. So as you mentioned, Pete, we try to make things as easy as possible, and using the platform allows us to do that. So much in line with your mentioning that there's no CapEx involved to get started with the offers of the free number porting, which is the moving of numbers. So you keep those. And getting everything spun up, there's no CapEx involved. So we'll reach out to everybody after the fact, but otherwise most people will probably have our contact details, so they can give us a call or send us an email. So
brilliant. And what I would say is there is a lot of information here, and there's a lot going on, and the only certainty really is uncertainty these days. It's the only thing we can kind of bank on. So what I'd say is you've got some fantastic resources with Matt and his team. That they really are the trusted advisors on this stuff. So maybe just get him in to do a review. It doesn't hurt just to have a bit of a look and say, am I doing this as well as I could be? Am I looking after my customers and my staff? And the guys will give you a really good assessment of that. And if we can help you, fantastic. But it's always good to get that understanding of where the market is, what you've currently got, and what options you have.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not for everybody at the end of the day. So absolutely, we really need to have a good look at everything and make sure we're asking those right questions. But having used it for the past 12 months, we've had a really positive experience. So that's why we're keen to get involved in a webinar to talk about it, because we can see a lot of value in that. So fantastic.
So I think, well, look, again, I just want to thank you, Matt, for giving us the opportunity to talk to your customers. It's always great to do that. And it's fantastic to see you again. And if I don't say before, you have a very merry festive break.
All right, thanks for joining us, Pete. Appreciate it. And likewise for you. Appreciate your expertise on this subject, and look forward to catching up soon.
Fantastic. All right. See you, everyone. Everyone have a lovely one. Thanks, Matt. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. See you later.